To politics now, days after congratulating, speaking of, Russia's President Vladimir Putin for the historic prisoner swap that brought home wrongfully imprisoned Americans.
That Vladimir Putin had kidnapped, by the way.
Former President Donald Trump weighed in on Venezuela. Here's what he said in a new interview about that country's president, Nicolas Maduro, whom many see as having lost last month's election, despite claiming victory.
Venezuela is right now being run by a dictator. We were enemies with Venezuela. Venezuela was going to collapse, and people could have gone back to Venezuela. They're in our country now. They've released tremendous numbers of criminals into our country. If you look at Caracas, it was known for being a very dangerous city, and now it's very safe. In fact, the next interview we'll do it in Caracas, Venezuela, because it's safer than many of our cities after they've released their criminals into all of our cities.
Yeah.
And, I'm kidding.
I know.
The reason I have to say that, because the fake news media knows that too, but they'll say, he suggested they go to Venezuela. They are so bad, it's hard to believe. But anyway, so Venezuela, their crime is down 72% because they've taken their criminal elements, which are large. It was a very dangerous place, especially Caracas and the different cities. And they've moved them into the United States of America.
So, first of all, Gene Robinson, let's not let the facts get in the way. He's praising Maduro for a reduction in crime, says that it's safer than many of American cities. Of course, don't want the details to burden anybody on that campaign, but violent crime in America is at a 50-year low. A 50-year low, just like when he became president of the United States, talking about building a wall, illegal border crossings, back when he became president, we're at a 50-year low under Barack Obama and Joe Biden, and got much worse when he became president. And again, we don't want to get in the way of just this free-form propaganda, but let's get in the way of this free-form propaganda. You actually have right now the number of illegal border crossings happening at the southern border at a point that is lower than when Donald Trump left office. So everything he said there, to quote Luke Skywalker at the end of the 8th Star Wars, everything he just said was wrong.
Yeah, everything was wrong. Let's start with his ridiculous claim that crime is somehow lower and violence is somehow lower in Caracas than in American cities. We still do not know how many people have died in the last week or been killed in the last week in Venezuela. People who participated in demonstrations against the dictator Maduro, who stole this election. Whom Donald Trump cannot be bothered to say anything bad about. This is a genuine thug who was sending phalanxes of goons out in the street to beat protesters. There's a massive sort of uprising against this theft of an election. This is absolutely absurd, everything that Donald Trump said, and the interviewer was just sitting there nodding along. Yeah, right. Oh yeah, absolutely. Is even more absurd, I think. None of it is true.
And of course, a week after the election, after the ballots have been reviewed independently, it's clear that Maduro lost in a landslide, and he's holding on to power the same way Donald Trump wanted to hold on to power, and that is just through force.
Is that how they connect?
And violence. And, Mike Barnicle, if somebody tells you who they are, believe them the first time, and if Donald Trump tells you what type of presidency he's going to run, believe it. He's now praising Maduro, just like he's always praised President Xi, just like he's always praised Kim Jong-un, just like he's always praised Vladimir Putin, congratulated him on taking hostages and getting a good deal for the hostages that he took. Of course, he's talked about having his chairman of his Joint Chiefs tried for treason and then killed. He's talked about how he can assassinate his political opponents with SEAL Team 6 and still have immunity. He's talked about trying media companies for treason. He's talked about Liz Cheney going before a military tribunal. I will say it is, again, historians will have to look back on this time and just ask what will seem to be the unanswerable question. Why a group of self-proclaimed conservatives whose political lives were defined by pushing back on communist China and communist Russia, why these same people now are embracing Donald Trump, who embraces a dictator, while they're embracing illiberal leaders who brag about throwing Western democracy under the bus, like Orban. Why? I don't get it.
You know, Joe, those historians that you just mentioned gathering sometime in the future to answer those questions that you just posed, I think we'll have one larger question that will supersede all the issues that you just raised. And the larger issue will be, how did that man ever become president of the United States? Watching that clip that we just showed, watching Donald Trump ramble through assorted issues, incoherently almost, raises that question not only in my mind, but I think in the minds of a lot of people watching this program and a lot of people who perhaps even voted for him in 2016 and 2020, wondering what is he talking about? Caddy, I don't know about you, but he's getting to be exhausting. Each time I see him on television, it's exhausting. I need to tape my eyelids open to continue watching him.
Don't do that. It hurts, Mike, taping your eyelids open. Please, protect them. Look, you know, this is what was frustrating for the Biden campaign when Joe Biden was at the top of the ticket, this idea that there was Trump amnesia. And that partly because Donald Trump had been tied up in courtrooms in New York, he wasn't out there on the campaign trail, and that when he was not being the Trump that people remembered with the chaos from the time when he was president. That's changed. And whether it's because it's Kamala Harris coming on to the top of the ticket and that's rattled him, but being behind in the polls or seeing her catching up in the polls, seeing the Democrats with all of this enthusiasm and energy, having Kamala Harris in the news and not himself in the news, seeing her crowd numbers bigger than his crowd numbers in Atlanta, all of that is the kind of thing that Donald Trump doesn't like. And when he's under pressure and he's in a situation he doesn't like, he acts out. And that's what we've seen over the last week or two. And that is exactly what Democrats are hoping will remind those voters who still haven't made up their minds, the kind of very few of them that are left, of why they don't want to go back to the days of the Trump administration.
And we are right to focus on the content of Trump's remarks. But we should also mention the setting. He was appearing with Aiden Ross, who's an internet celebrity with a very popular live streaming site. Now he is trolled with trouble. He's had Nick Fuentes, the white supremacist, on his show. He is self-accused of spouting hateful things at times, and he also gifted Trump both a Cybertruck and a Rolex, which are obviously gifts that the Trump campaign cannot accept because they're way too big. But we should note, about 500,000 people watched this yesterday. And Aiden Ross is very popular with young men. And this is where the Trump campaign is. I mean, this is sort of an absurd setting in many ways. But this is part of their outreach, is they're trying to stir up young men, particularly mostly white men, but trying to get some men of color who are angry with the world. And they feel like that is people who can be turned out to vote, new voters perhaps, for the Trump campaign. That's their theory anyway.